Good evening, and welcome to this edition of Nights to Know series featuring film and advertising changemakers. I am Dr. Penny Peer, the Grant L. Price Endowed Department Chair in Journalism and Communication, and I'm thrilled to have you join us tonight. Tonight, we are thrilled to explore the world of voices in film and advertising, a conversation that spans how creativity, innovation, and purpose driven work are transforming these fields. Through the voices of our incredible alumni, we will gain insight into how they are shaping, influencing, and redefining what it means to lead with creativity and purpose. It is a personal privilege for me to celebrate and honor alums from our department. JCOM alums are so generous in sharing their time and talents with our current students, and I would like to extend my personal gratitude for their presence tonight. Feel free to submit your questions using the Q&A button throughout tonight's webinar. We will be keeping an eye on them and we'll do our best to answer as many as we can during the Q&A session toward the end of our program. Now, please welcome President Ertzman, the 18th president of Wartburg College.
Thank you, Penny. It is my pleasure to welcome our students, alumni, and friends of the college to Nights to Know, a series that explores the amazing work that Wartburg graduates are doing out in the world. Tonight, we are joined by alumni that are doing just this. And it's such a privilege to call these people friends because we have such great alumni and they're going to share some fantastic stories with you tonight. So it's really thrilling also for me to co-host these sessions with a student. So Allie Parkhurst is our co-host this evening. Allie, will you please join us and share a little bit more about yourself?
Thank you, President Erskine. My name is Allie Parkhurst. I am a second-year sports media, graphic design, and public relations major on campus. I'm also the editor-in-chief for the Wartburg Trumpet, our online newspaper, a peer mentor, and I work in the marketing and communication office as a student photographer. We have a great group of alumni joining us today. I'd like to give them each an opportunity to introduce themselves and share about their career path and how it got them to where they are today. First off, we have Ryan Hahn.
Hi, I'm Ryan. I graduated from Wartburg in 2008 and with a degree in public relations and electronic media and minors in leadership principles, business, and intercultural communications. After graduating in '08, I moved out to New York and I started working in new media at RCA Records under Sony Music, breaking new artists internationally and established artists that are global pop stars, and Condé Nast, working for Vanity Fair, Vogue, and titles like that, before moving into television. I spent the majority of my time working at HBO on the shows that I loved and I grew up loving, but mainly talking about dragons on Game of Thrones. I was the day-to-day manager for that. But things were changing, and I realized that I needed to change with it. So about 9 years ago, I moved to LA to start working in streaming at Amazon Studios, Hulu, Google, working with creators, and now I'm at Universal Pictures, working in international marketing, again, for movies.
Thank you so much, Ryan. Next, we have Tim Stockman.
Hey, Allie. Thanks for having me on. Happy to be here. Yeah, I graduated Wartburg in '97, and like a lot of the comm arts majors of that era, I was under the tutelage of Grant Price, and so I'm thinking like 95% of us went into the news business. And I was a broadcast news journalist for 10 years. I started in La Crosse, Wisconsin. I ended up in Orlando, and that's where I kind of hung up the microphone from reporting. And then Penny, I decided to give my PR degree a little workout, and for 4 years I went to a hotel development group here on the coast in Daytona and did their government relations for about 4 years before founding Blue Dog Video, which is the company that I run today. And we're coming up on our 15th year. We do a lot of commercial production for medical systems and for law firms. And I'm also a GSA federal contractor schedule holder, which means that I do work for the federal government, and I've contracted with them for departments like NOAA and the VA. I did a lot of work for the VA for the past 2 years, and currently I'm working with the Department of Agriculture. So Blue Dog has had an incredible journey, as I have. It's been very diverse, but one thing that's always grounded me is the incredible education and the breadth of that education and experience I had at Wartburg, I think is one thing that's allowed me to become, as successful, I guess, as I have, is because I had the foundation built right there in Waverly.
Thank you, Tim. Our third member joining us is Christopher Warmanen.
Hello. I graduated Wartburg in 95, so Tim and I overlapped by 2 years. And then I actually went out to LA right away because my family was moving there. And so I went with them and worked for I should say what I did at Wartburg. It was communication arts and business. So I had PR and marketing degrees with a minor in English British literature, which was the hardest part of all of that, I will tell you. British novel, very difficult class. Okay, so then after graduating, I went to LA and worked for Lucky Stores, which was a grocery store chain in their in-house marketing department, not the Cool Jeans store. And then kind of realized that I wanted to be in the ad agency world, so I went to grad school at a place in Atlanta called the Portfolio Center for 2 years, and that is how I developed my portfolio, which showed what I could do and sort of the way I think and ideas and stuff, and that's what you need to get into an ad agency. So then I got my job in Chicago at an ad agency called Leo. We have rebranded from Leo Burnett, is our official old-time name from originally 90 years ago, but this year we are now called Leo because things are hipper and cooler if they're shorter. So we are changing with the times, and I've been lucky to work on all sorts of national brands, and I'll talk about some of those as we go into the questions. And I'm thrilled and honored to be here with such an esteemed panel.
I think this is going to be a really fun conversation tonight because each of you bring such different energy, but also so many amazing experiences. Ryan, I had no idea about the dragons, so we need to talk about that later. I'm going to start with Tim. Tim and I had a wonderful conversation right beside the Daytona Speedway about 2 years ago, Tim, I think it was. And I'm so grateful to Tim for helping with our strategic planning right now and for the ways he's engaging with the college. So Tim, if you look way back, we've got students on the call, we've got alum on the call. When you look all the way back at the beginning of your career, what was the first spark of interest? Why did you get into these fields in film, advertising? How did you nurture those creative passions as a student and as you've evolved throughout your career?
It was not my intention. I've always been a creative guy, and I was always on stage or performing and stuff. But when I came to Wartburg, I was a history and political science major. I had no intention. Well, it hadn't crossed my mind. I shouldn't say I had no intention. But I had a really good friend that I made right off the bat, and he was the one who convinced me to try out for the choir. So he was giving good advice because I was one of 4 freshmen who actually made it into the Wartburg choir. And he said he was a comm arts major, and he said, "Hey, you got to come check this out." And I had known Grant Price because I had seen him on TV. Because I grew up in Eastern Iowa, so Grant Price was the news director and the anchor at KWWL. So I knew who he was. And I happened to walk through the Comm Arts building when they were preparing to do one of their, I think we did our news shows every 2 weeks, and they were getting ready. And I saw the students behind the board. I saw the students in the headsets. I actually got to meet Grant. And, with that commanding demeanor of his, I would just immediately just fell in awe of this guy. And I made a fairly rapid switch over to communication arts. And I also saw how much fun they were having. And not just, they weren't screwing around. They were extremely knowledgeable with the radio station and the newspaper and the TV station. These guys knew their stuff, but they were having a fantastic time doing it. And I thought, I want to be a part of this. I think I can be good at this. I don't know how I'd be in the business world. I wouldn't find out till, 25 odd years later if I knew anything about business. But yeah, that's really, and it was a great outlet for me. I'd never considered news before, but I knew I liked the camera work. I liked editing, and I liked being able to tell stories. First and foremost, I like telling stories. And I thought that's what I could do in the news. And that's what led me into video production. I haven't really done anything so much with film. I don't do Game of Thrones or make movies or anything, but my outlet especially for my company now, with the scope of what we are doing now, I've found that I can, on either a very small level for my local clients or on a national level for the U.S. federal government, I'm able to now, since I'm in command of the company, I'm able to actually tell those stories and walk hand in hand with my clients to be like, I know what you want to say. Let me help you say it. And this is what I can do for you. And really over the last 3 years with Uncle Sam, I've seen a direct impact on a national scale of what we've been doing, especially for the veterans. And it was so impactful for me and my guys to know that we're doing something good and getting paid for it. And that's how I got to where I am now. I still don't know where my boat's going, but I'm just along for the ride sometimes.
I don't think many of us know where our boats are going. So this is I think a group of people that have just kind of followed the path and, found great opportunities because they were open to them. Christopher or Ryan, anything you want to add about those early kind of creative passions, what sparked your interest, how those have evolved over time?
Yeah, when I went to Wartburg, I knew I didn't want to be on stage because I tried out in high school for the musicals. I was on stage and I didn't like all the attention, but I knew I wanted to be part of like building the show. And that first day on Wartburg when we were moving in and the TV crew was interviewing people and grabbing people and like shooting stuff, I saw them and I'm like, that's who I want to be. That's what I want to do. I want to be with those people. And I did for the next 4 years, but I feel like for the rest of my life.
And Allie, you said that you are the editor of the Wartburg Trumpet, and I always say that was actually the best preparation for what I do now, because even though I went to 2 years of like ad school for my portfolio, I learned at Wartburg how to work under pressure to put out the Wartburg Trumpet every Sunday night. That had to be, for us, it had to be printed in time for Monday lunch. And also to how to organize people, and sometimes you just got to make it work, and that's a lot of what I do now still. So, and then one thing too, also that I was reminded of in a marketing or advertising class, there was a Board of Regents member that happened to work at BBDO, which is a big ad agency in New York, and he came in and told stories about his experience there, and that was very inspiring to me. And then I was like, I want to work on Madison Avenue. So I love, Ryan, that you actually made it to New York. I did 1 month there for urban ministry class my freshman year and fell in love with it. And I love going back to New York, but I've sort of found my bit of New York in Chicago. But so it was his presentation in an advertising class that was also very inspiring to me.
I like that you bring up the pressure that came with editing everything on a Sunday. Now we do rolling publications because we're fully online. So it kind of spaces it out a little bit. I get to do some little bit of editing one day or maybe a lot the next day and then one day. So it's kind of nice, a little bit less pressure for me. My question is actually for you, Christopher. How do you decide which stories are worth telling? What makes a narrative resonate with audiences?
Right. Well, so from an advertising perspective, the main answer is usually because the client tells me I need to. Because, we are like answering business problems for our clients. But it goes into like what makes an interesting concept, and what really always resonates is stories that are from a human perspective that elicit human emotion. And one of those emotions can be humor. So, you think of a lot of commercials are, funny commercials. And I'll show an example of, I'll show an example of a couple of funny ones of mine. And I'm going to see if I can actually share the screen, which we tried earlier. And this always brings a meeting to a halt, even in my world. Okay, here we go. I hope I said share sound. So, okay, tell me if you cannot hear it.
My insurance rates are probably going to double.
But Dad, you've got...
Allstate. With accident forgiveness, they guarantee your rates won't go up just because of an accident.
Smart kid.
Indeed. Are you in good hands?
So, I hope you could hear that. Could you hear that? Okay, good. Okay, so that's an Allstate spot from several years ago that they did run it a lot because it was a way to get across a important insurance feature for Allstate, which is accident forgiveness, but get it across in a breakthrough way because the Dennis Haysbert's voice was coming out of the little girl's mouth. So that, sort of a basic rule of advertising and how to tell a story is to put two disparate things together and they make a new thing that kind of gets your attention. And so that's kind of a classic example of doing that. That was the first of those commercials in that campaign, and then a bunch of other people worked on other ones where his voice was coming out of other people's mouths. So he was an ownable brand asset for Allstate that everybody inherently knew was Allstate when you heard his voice. So that was a way to do that. And then, okay, since I have the stage for one more second, I'll share this other silly one, which is another way to use humor in advertising for kids' cereals. And it's an oldie, but I'm wondering if anybody remembers this. This is for, and this might share the sound better. Hopefully you hear this better.
All right, Kellogg's Cinnamon Marshmallow Scooby-Doo cereal, take
Which I need to actually say share. Okay, now
22.
See if this one.
All right, Kellogg's Cinnamon Marshmallow Scooby-Doo cereal, take 22. No, Scooby, that's now with Scooby Marshmallows. Take 23. Does he have the right script? Scooby Marshmallows.
Ruby Marshmallow.
Scooby.
Ruby
Marshmallows.
Marshmallow.
Scooby.
Ruby Scoob. Ruby.
Scooby.
Ruby.
Kellogg's Cinnamon Marshmallow Scooby-Doo cereal. It's part of a complete breakfast. Now with Scooby Marshmallows for a limited time.
Just pick it up at Ruby Marshmallow.
Ruby Marshmallow.
What am I saying? Cut.
Anyway, so those are a couple oldies that I dug up, but that is very product forward advertising. It said like Kellogg's Cinnamon Marshmallow Scooby-Doo cereal like 8 times, but it just says it in a entertaining way, I hope. So and just by the way, I got to work with Casey Kasem on that ad because Casey Kasem is like an old radio guy that he was the voice of Shaggy. Anyway, okay, so that was my answer to how sometimes in advertising you tell an engaging story because the client needs you to, but you figure out the creative way to do it. Somebody else gets to talk.
Ryan or Tim, do you want to add anything about kind of stories worth telling, how you think about? I think, Tim, especially in your work, you're working with a lot of clients. How do you help them discern what they want to use, how they want to use it? How does that work?
Well, I think it was Liz Mathis when she was back at Warburg. She had a saying. She kept saying that everybody has a story and that news is people. And I carry that with me, especially when I'm talking with marketing teams for bigger companies that may have their brand has gotten too big for the britches and they forget who they're actually marketing to. And I pitch, I don't know how many times I pitched this, how many teams, how many rooms, testimonials from real people, stories about real people. That's what resonates in my work. And even, when I'm doing healthcare, obviously it's a no-brainer, but with my law firms, I convinced one of the major law firms here that they need to stop putting their attorneys on TV and start talking to someone who got run over and got a check for $2 million, because that person who they're putting on camera looks like the clients who walk through the doors. They don't look like the attorneys. They look like the clients. But yeah, it's also adaptation. And when you're on a big level, like say like the VA, they're a huge department, but their clientele is the person that you're shopping next to. They're the veteran that from your neighborhood who served in Iraq, who doesn't talk about it very much anymore, but he looks like you. So, I always try to have that conversation that I've done some stuff that's big and overarching in this sort of brand marketing that really doesn't have a personal touch to it. And it's fine, I'll do it. But the stuff that I really enjoy when I think myself and my team thrives is when we really get our teeth into it. And when the marketing team that maybe we've worked with for several years really trusts us and they can come to us and say, hey, this is what we want to say. We're the best hospital for strokes in this area. How do we say that, Tim? And then I go back with my guys who are amazingly creative, and we kick it around, and we try to sell it to our parents, really. We're like, how would you sell this to Jim and Sue Stockman in Iowa? How would you tell them that if they have a stroke, they should probably go here? So that personal, I don't think that'll ever leave. I don't think that'll ever leave that thread that runs through all successful marketing is, it's got to be relatable. And I try to, talk and work with my marketing teams that it's the story, the message is in the story, but the story is what's most compelling. And even if you go on my website to this day, I'll put the first line, what does Blue Dog do? We are storytellers. We are a storytelling company. We're not a video company. We're not a photography company or a graphic design company. We're storytellers. And we use this vehicle to tell your story. So that's where I am.
Yeah. Ryan, anything you want to add about creative narratives process?
Yeah, I think authenticity is such a dirty word now because it's been overused, but it is the appropriate word. And Tim, what you're saying about telling real stories, I know that was eye-opening for me when I went from glossy Hulu TV shows to working at Google and had a bunch of data information at my fingertips. It was like I was drinking from the fountainhead. And I was seeing that glossy stuff wasn't resonating with people. They wanted real stories. They wanted to see themselves in their content. And since then, like whatever projects I'm working on, I try to have that come across in my storytelling. And more importantly, I work with filmmakers, I work with TV producers, I work with people who have a strong vision. And I feel like they're deep in the rabbit hole. So they're being very creative, thinking out of the box, taking two things that shouldn't be together. And my role has been to build that stage for them. So how do I help them tell their story? How do I meet people where they're at? So when it comes to like what stories resonate or not, it's always the audience for me. And it's always looking at data as well, which not everyone's that nerdy. I can understand, not wanting to like dive into that. But I think those are the signals for what to do and what will work in the future.
Yeah, and I love what you both said because social media also has totally changed like the way that we do advertising. Like since those spots that I showed you were made, like social media has sort of changed everything. And so in many ways we are back to those basic goodnesses of a real unadulterated human story. Yeah, it always wins. So yeah, love it.
So we don't have any.
I'll tell you a little story real quick.
Yeah, story, good.
For the creative guys in there, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I just love the story. So we were doing a commercial for a personal injury law firm, and the client testimonial I talked him into was this older guy. He was very heavy set, had a deep Southern accent, and he was missing a tooth, and he was covered in tattoos. And when he got to set, the client said, "We'll keep his sleeves down, and we're going to shoot him from the other side so we don't show that tooth." Mm-hmm. And I said, "No way.
Right.
We're shooting. They're going to see the tooth." And I said, "Roll the sleeves up. Show those tattoos because this looks like Daytona Beach." And that's who you're selling to. And that was one of their most popular commercials to this day. And that was 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That's authentic.
I'm glad you interrupted me because that was kind of where I was going to go. We don't have any questions in the Q&A yet. So we've got a couple minutes that I feel like I can insert a different question. But how do each of you, like one of my favorite leadership questions is, tell me why this is a terrible idea, right? Tell me why this won't work. But what you've just said, Tim, when you've got to deal with people that bring you an idea in the creative space that you're like, this is a really bad idea, or we definitely shouldn't do that, or we need to show that tattoos and show the tooth because we want to personalize this. How do you deal with that in the creative space when somebody brings you something that you think, this is just not going to work?
It's 100% trust. My career with this company has been building trust in clients. And with the new ones, you have to build that. But with people you've been around to, they have to trust you because your image is in their hands. Their message, their whole branding is in your hand. When it gets down to shoot day, I can make or break you. I mean, granted, you'll never hire me again if I break you, but they put a lot of trust in you. And those conversations that you have, in between the spaces, the conversations in the hallways, the getting to know you, you taking them out to lunch or whatever. When you build that level of trust with your client, and this has happened time and time again, where they've come to me, like my hospital or someone has come to me and said, "Hey, what do you think of this?" And I'll tell them, I really don't like it. But I'll tell them why. And if you want to do it, I'll do it. However, this is how I'd approach it. And they trust me to give them, because in the end, they don't want you to be a yes person. They're not paying you to lie to them. And if you say, yeah, that's a great idea, and then you put a campaign together and it's garbage, that looks bad on you as well. So I try to really impress upon the folks that I'm working with directly that it's my skin as well as theirs. I want to see them grow so I can grow. I want you to look good so I look good. If we do something that's not good, people are going to say, who made that commercial? That was garbage. Well, Tim made it. Well, why didn't he say something? I don't know. So it's that trust and level of comfort that you have to build the rapport. So, when you talk about the comm arts department, what the folks are learning at Wartburg, that interpersonal communication, whether than just right up there with knowing how to create and knowing how to read data and knowing how to write, all that stuff. What's also in that mix is, do you know how to talk to someone like a human being, not in the client relationship, that they can trust you so that you can make hard calls and they're going to be like, you know what, he's right.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's so insightful. And even just super duper basic things like being on camera on a Teams call, which we always have to remind sometimes people that they need to do that, because we are visual creatures who rely on the feedback from other people. So those basic things are totally wonderful ways that Wartburg comes through for all of its students, because that's what everybody learns there, among many other things. And then I would say too, trust is so key with clients. Like many of the campaigns that I worked on, like for Allstate, the Mayhem campaign, which is still running, with mayhem being the embodiment of bad things that happen. I can't take credit for coming up with that campaign, but I worked on a lot of it, and that is an example of a campaign that would never have happened had we not had really close relationships and trust with our client. And last, I'll just say that you often have to shoot things two ways. So, like Tim, I can imagine you got a couple of backup shots of the person like your client wanted you to, so you had them in the can, but you can show them both and say this one and recommend the one that's going to be right. And so, as long as you have both, right?
I absolutely do that, if for nothing else, just to show them that I was right.
Exactly. Right. But everybody needs to feel listened to, and so that's an easy client thing that is just obvious. We're all human beings. We want to feel like we are being heard. So that's all very important.
So we're going to go on to the next question. A reminder to all of our participants online, the Q&A is open. We welcome your questions. So if anything's popping up for you, things you'd like to ask, please don't hesitate to put those in the Q&A box. Ryan, the next question is for you, or to start with for you. I think a lot about these professions, and I think, wow, there's a lot of competition. I mean, to be creative and to be creative in a competitive way, to me feels like a lot of pressure to be creative. And so during your studies, during your career, what has helped you develop the resilience, the confidence, the courage to get out there and be competitive in this creative space?
It was grounding for me at Wartburg to not get everything that I wanted. I came in with the gusto, knowing what I wanted to do, and I had my 4-year schedule planned out. It was like to a T. And some things didn't work out, like Wartburg West. It was a semester where it was all education students, so they were going there to teach, and there was no space for people who weren't. And I remember just being so depressed because I wanted to go. I wanted that to be part of my story. And walking into Joe Dorance's office, who was pivotal, in building my entire career, basically. And she said, it's too bad this didn't work out. That happens in life sometime, but this was a stepping stone for you to move to New York and get there. Why don't you just go there for the semester? And that's a wild idea, to leave this semester, winter term, and I had a couple professors that got on board, so I was able to work out taking those classes and still interacting with students and turning in papers. Bill Withers pulled a lot of strings. Edith Waldstein pulled a lot of strings for me, and that's when I interned at Sony Music, which led to my first job. So I think of that. It's not necessarily in the classroom, but it's in being grounded in reality and trying to find a way to make things work. And that's the resilience that I still call on every day.
That's awesome. Yeah. And Jo is retiring soon. So you have to reach out to her and congratulate her on her retirement and all these incredible years that she's served our students. Christopher, Tim, thoughts on resilience, thoughts on this creative competition, how that feels for you, how that works in the spaces that you work within.
For me, an important lesson that you have to learn early on in advertising or other creative fields is you have to separate yourself personally from the ideas that you come up with. So especially when you're newer in the industry, it's easy to be have the wind taken out of your sails when you have a bad client meeting and they say, I don't like those ideas, and you start to think they don't like me, but that's not true. They just don't like something about it that you can fix, and so as long as you don't take it personally, that's what I do to maintain. Otherwise, I would be just crying every night. So it's a survival tactic to not take it personally.
Yeah, I mean, you can't take the losses personally. The losses are opportunities to learn, is how I've always felt. The resilience and the competitive drive really, we're certainly born with certain genes, but I going into the news and getting the advanced tutelage that I think Grant and the others kind of beat into us, really made us tough and aggressive when it came to competing, particularly in a newsroom. And I know the 10 years that I spent in the news, you can beat me over the head with a 2x4 all day long, but I'm still going to get the story. It made me extremely tough, extremely fast. And the newsrooms in the real world are pretty vicious. So you had to always be swimming towards the top of the water. You always had to be moving that. And I carry that with me now that I'm in the private sector, quasi-private sector. That competitive edge hasn't gone, and I look forward to competition because I think that sharpens my edge. And I think that the education and the training I got at Wartburg and also in the news makes me somewhat unique, because for those folks that I know that have rival production companies who have always been in that space and they didn't have that experience where you're competing, because in the comm arts department, you're also always competing to be the best. It's not vicious. It's just because you want to be, right? You have great people around you. You want to be the greatest of the great, right? But I run into other production companies and they're missing that edge. Whereas they see my company when we're running up against her on the same bid, it's almost like I can see that they don't know what this guy's gonna do. He looks a little crazy over there at Blue Dog. And that gives me an edge because I'm not afraid. I actually welcome when a new company comes into my little AO over here. My crew kind of, freaks out and does a bunch of research, but I'm like, let's see what they got. And if we're good enough and we're smart enough and we have the best relationships, I'm obviously not very scared of them, but maybe they can teach me something. And, we've been very fortunate here in my little edge of Florida that, I came in and I pushed some people out, some people pushed back, but, we've got a pretty good grip on this little area. But I like to see especially when it's someone younger who comes in and starts trying something new, the first thing I do is try to meet them, then go out to lunch with them, see what they're doing, see what they want to do, see how that intertwines with how Blue Dog operates. Maybe I can use them, and I've made probably half of my staff were once my competition. And they saw the way I operated and they saw that there was a way forward without us killing each other with bids, trying to underbid everybody, that, if they just kind of hopped in on, we could do some great stuff together. So, that competitive edge I think has always been with me, but Wartburg really helped me hone it. And the news sharpened me into a very dangerous blade, which to be fair, has been very blunted. I'm a much nicer guy now. But, I think I owe a lot of it to those formative years when I was in college and right out of college and saying, hey, you're going to get beaten up, but you have to get back up and people will respect that.
Yeah, and I have a quick practical answer. I know I already said one answer, but my other practical answer is to in a way to be resilient, especially if you're new in advertising, is to be cool with finding like to specialize in something that somebody else doesn't want to do. Like take the project that like, ugh, yuck, I don't want to do that. And so for me, it was there's something called co-op ads that Allstate agents do. Like think of any real estate agent or anything. It's always like insert photo of them here, and it's a pre-populated template. And so nobody wanted to do those for Allstate, and I raised my hand with my art director at the time, and like we can figure these out. And so we kind of revamped how that worked, and then we became the co-op guys for a while. But it helped me keep a job for quite some time because I knew how to do a co-op ad. So find whatever that is and make it work for you.
Well, and Christopher, I just was in a meeting yesterday and I shared with one of our senior team members, I'm always looking for the people at Wartburg that are willing to do the stuff that no one else wants to do and do it well, because
Right.
those are the people you're going to tap again and again and again. Because if you're willing to do the work that nobody wants to do, then you're really going to get excited when you get to do the stuff you really want to do. And so I think that also breeds confidence in your leaders about you, and demonstrates your willingness to really play for the team and not just for yourself. So I really appreciate that example.
Yeah, and really ingratiates yourself to a client too. If you solve a problem for them and make them look good to their boss, they're going to love you.
I really like the points that all of you guys made, Tim, especially about being in the newsroom. It does make you a pretty sharp blade. Tim, my next question is actually for you, and you kind of answered it honestly. How do you stay inspired and keep your work fresh in a field that's demanding constant changes and to stay relevant in society?
It's changing, and with AI, it's changing every day. I watch a lot of videos. I listen a lot. When I target someone I want to be a future customer, I'll watch, what is the competition doing? What is a previous vendor doing? And why am I not doing that? But as for technology, I'm a lifelong learner. I'm always on YouTube watching tutorials on technology that's coming or that's already here. I just like to learn it, even though I'm getting a little gray or a lot gray. If you don't do the research and you don't know what's coming down the pipe, it's gonna hit you, and you're gonna have to deal with it one way or the other. Do you want to be ahead of it, or do you want to be trying to catch up? And I'd much rather be ahead of it. But as far as being inspired to be creative, I take that. I feed so much off my clients and their individual personalities. I just love these people. Some of my clients have been with me all 15 years. They've been so good to me, and they're such great people. Yeah, I just genuinely like them. And as I get to know them, I can take little pieces when I'm presenting something or pitching something that I know is going to speak to them or kind of speaks their language. And that they drive me to be creative, and they feel comfortable coming to me saying, hey, we saw this this video, we think it's AI and it's a cartoon, and can you do this? And that inspires me to say, well, I can't right now, but if you give me a couple of weeks, I will. And that comes back to the trust issue that they could go to somebody else, but they're like, this guy's going to probably figure it out sooner or later. But I'm constantly inspired by what I see, what's going on around me. I read a lot of news. I watch a lot of videos and TV, and that's really what I draw it from, because I see it's kind of like the whole a lot of the stock market guys will tell you, just find something you like. The next time you're at the grocery store, if you find yourself buying the same product and you really like it, buy stock in that because you like it. And chances are there's a lot of other people that like it. So when I see something that resonates with me or sparks with me, like Christopher, your commercials, man, I didn't know all these years that I was such a fan of your work, but Allstate did some great commercials. I love the mayhem spots. And, when I see stuff like that and it sparks with me, I'm like, that's cool, that's creative. Then I can go back to my clients, and if they want to do a commercial or something, I'm like, I'll show them like mayhem spots, or I'll show them spots of stuff I can't do, but say, we can do something like this. One time I saw a Taylor Swift video that I really liked, but there's a one camera shoot where it was all one shot. And I pitched it to Halifax Health for this special nurses thing that they were doing. I was like, look, it's not going to look like a Taylor Swift video, but we can do a one camera shot where we walk from one end of the hospital to the other. And in every department, we duck in and the nurses are doing something crazy. And we did it. And that was just me seeing an artist I don't particularly listen to. And I just was scanning through YouTube and I saw it and I was like, that's cool. I bet you we can do it in our own way. And that's another thing, is that when you see something you like, you have to go back to your own well and say, okay, I'd love to do that, but I can't. But what can I do? And how can I make it my own? You have to own it, a little bit, thinking that I can make it better or I can make it unique. So it's not a knockoff. It's a Blue Dog production. It's inspired by. So that's really what keeps me going. And as far as, continuing to be creative, it's just every time I meet with a client, every time I bring in a new client, I'm learning a new personality, and my clients inspire me. I don't want to tell them that. I don't want to tip my hand too much, but these guys, the clients are everything. And even when, the federal government you think is cold and it's not gonna, these are people that work in cubicles and stuff. I learned so much at the VA just from the individual people, and the stuff I was doing with them, I am transferring to the Department of Ag. I'm saying, this is what I was doing up in DC. What do you think about this? And that's how you just kind of keep that creativity flowing, is you just have to, you get these little souvenirs from people as you go through life. And that drives you and that inspires you. I'm not the most creative person in the world, but I do know how to assemble a team, and I know how to, see something that I like, that I think other people like, and figure out how to do it.
I love that. To quickly build off of what you said about music and music videos and stuff, I use music all the time to be an inspiration for stuff, and to listen to whatever the current thing is, keeps you fresh and makes things sound modern and everything. But I did once use a Kylie Minogue video as inspiration for a United Healthcare video, and they bought it, and they were like, they're really excited that they were using Kylie as a reference. So yeah. I was proud of that.
I can't get you out of my head. That one?
Let's get you out of my head.
Yeah, something like that. How about you, Ryan?
So happy to hear that you consume a lot of music. I think I do the same thing. I'm a hyper consumer technically, but I think that's it. Like, there's a grit that comes from working in media where you just are curious about everything and you want to absorb and read and watch and listen to everything. And there's that little joy that comes from a spark of something you didn't know a minute ago. I'm chasing that. I'm still chasing that. And I think that we live in a time where we understand the other side of the equation more than we ever have before. I talked about how, like, my career really shifted at these legacy companies in New York to LA. That was because we finally understood who was watching something, who was clicking on something. Social media is a big driver for that, but everything is. Like, we can finally understand when people are watching and when they turn off, when they get bored, or when they don't like something, they're vocal about it, and they can be. So it's just, they finally have a voice, and I feel like that conversation is so inspiring to me, that drives a lot of the creativity, because before it was, just talking to yourself or a bunch of people talking to themselves. And now we get to actually talk to the audience.
So quick segue into an audience question, because I think it fits here. AI. Helpful, hurtful, interesting, curious, adds creativity, sucking the life out of you. How are y'all feeling about AI in this moment?
It reminds me a lot of early days of the internet. Like, it was just wacky. People were building whatever they wanted, and we didn't know any better. And then it got to a point where, I mean, even now, like, there's a lot of a lot of complaints about how the internet is broken. Like, it doesn't, like, search and work the way that it once did. I think that's AI. I think we're in the early days of trying to figure out how these tools work for us. I took one of the seminars from MIT from the professors who built the robotics and language processing tools, and like, really, like, the fundamentals of the AI systems that we use today. We've been using it since the 60s. Like, it has been our traffic lights and telling the planes where to land, and, like, it's been kind of built in as a backbone for an entire lifetime. It's just now, like, the public is aware of it. The internet was around for a while, and then the public was aware of it and they could use it themselves. So it seems like the messy time, but I'm so relieved that people are recognizing slop. that they know when there's an authentic story being told, that they want that human connection more than they ever have before. So I'm not frightened by AI. Maybe I should be. I don't know. Like that's the future. But I see it as a tool that will help us express our own stories.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head because AI, as it is in its current iteration, to me seems like really advanced predictive text, which it is. I think AI finally found its packaging because it's been here for a while. I know the technology is much different now in how it learns. That was the key to AI and not being predictive text, is that it learns from you. But Google has been doing somewhat of that with their search. I'm feeling lucky. That was based on your behaviors. But I think you need to stay ahead of it. I think it's getting overblown. When you see like a mattress company saying we have AI in your mattress or whatever, I'm like, what do you need that for? I think it'll come down to earth. But if for those of us in technology or in the media space, I think that you need to run really fast on that treadmill to keep from falling off the back, because AI is the worst that it'll ever be today, and tomorrow it's going to be better. So that's been really the primary focus of my learning recently has been keeping up with how AI directly affects me with video editing. Audio editing is superb, and photoshopping and how to use it in that. And I am using AI now every day for that. I don't use it for writing because Wartburg taught me how to write. So I don't need it for an email. But I think that, woe be to you if you're not learning something about, or not necessarily embracing it, but engaging with it. So you have a baseline of knowledge, because AI a year from now is not going to look the same as it is today. But if you don't have a baseline of understanding of what exactly it's supposed to be doing, and being able to, as you mentioned, Ryan, recognize what is AI and what is not, that's key to the whole. That's what's either going to bring down civilization or not. Is when AI can fool people like us. It's game over. I can't imagine. I cannot even begin to predict what the presidential election is going to look like with all this AI out there. It is going to be absolutely brutal unless they put some guardrails in there. It's scary, real scary. I don't think it's going to take my job, though. You always need that human aspect of, can this person write? Can this person tell a story? AI cannot interact with your client.
Right.
And that's what's most important.
Yep, agreed. And so in advertising, on the creative field that I'm in, you're either a writer or an art director, and I'm a writer and I work with an art director partner all the time. And it's my art directors who are getting the most positive use out of AI right now. Like it saves them tons of time in generative fills for backgrounds to fill in extra space on either side, etc. That's just a simple use. But so on the agency side, we definitely are embracing it carefully, and some of our clients are very specific about not using it. But so we know what we can do for our different clients. But it's all part of, the world is changing and we have to change along with it.
We've talked a little bit about your process, your creation. We've talked about kind of, AI technology, all these other pieces, the clients. What about your coworkers? Tim, I think you referenced a little bit about grabbing some of your competition to work alongside you, which I think is a fascinating strategy. Christopher, you and I had a beautiful opportunity to tour the Leo building in Chicago and to see how it was set up to create collaborative space, right? So that the creative minds can work together. How does collaboration work in your fields? How do you work alongside people? What are the opportunities, the challenges, and how does it help you bring things to life together?
Well, certainly, I think the pandemic made it so that now everything we do is some form of a virtual meeting and an in-person thing. So I think the virtual part will never go away. So you do need to be really comfortable with collaborating via, like we're talking right now. Something that totally has changed the way that I work are collaborative docs. So, the Google Docs of the world, or like putting a PowerPoint in Teams and becoming collaborative. And that has really it made much more efficient the way that I work with other people. So I just am constantly changing things or putting notes on things and suggesting to my art director, do you think this frame should be over here, whatever, and he sees it right away versus having to email it back and forth. So collaborative tools is my answer.
What a learning curve to learn how to communicate that way, like over Slack, spreads your ideas. And it makes me think how many meetings I've had where we didn't talk about anything really. Like we kind of went over the status of what was happening, but we didn't get to the meat of it. And it's so nice now to share these ideas quickly for people to understand that they can have an opinion about it.
Yep.
I know it's always a hurdle in the past to explain a concept, right? And like in advertising, same across the board, like you sketch it, you bring in a mood board, you kind of like, you have all these different ways to bring an idea to life, but it's still everyone imagining what it looks like. It's so wonderful with AI that you can just do that yourself in an instant. And it may not be exactly the idea, but for those early conversations, it's so nice to share something. And it's great that I can get instant feedback. The documents you were talking about, I think that's how we make TV shows. Everything's in a deck now. And earlier we were talking about different programs. Everything I do is a deck. So it is putting ideas in deck and copies in deck, and it's become how we communicate with executives and people who don't have a lot of time to sit with ideas and comprehend things.
Yeah, collaboration is key, and you guys both touched on it. We can do it now better than we ever have, and it's really cool to me to be able to video conference with clients who aren't from this area instead of driving up to Jacksonville or Atlanta or wherever. To me, I like face-to-face meetings, but it's really nice to be able to have all these different voices. And as I alluded to, I really thrive off differing voices. I mean, that's just the innate, curiosity of meeting new people and ideas from people who grew up very, very differently than me. And the idea that we have all these tools now to collaborate, there's very few projects that we go through that don't have some different fingers on it, at some point, whether it be the client or even when I'm out on shoots, if I'm not in a videographer role, if I'm sitting back and pretending to be a producer, I'm letting my guys run free because I want to see what they can do. We'll keep it, we'll keep the net a little bit, but that collaboration in the creative space is absolutely essential because no one, is the end all be all of creative genius. And you don't know when the intern is going to say something incredibly insightful. That's I've had ideas that have come up from people who have been working with me the first day on the job. They come up with an idea and we're still doing some of those things. It's really cool. And in the creative space, you have to be open and willing to listen and understand that you're not the best at what you do. You may be the best in your little silo, but there's always different ideas. There's always some cool new perspective you haven't thought of. Someone grew up very different than you and they see the world different and they might have a really good idea. So, you've got 2 ears and one mouth for a reason. Listen to them, try it. No harm in trying. There's no such thing as a bad idea. There's just failed ideas, and that's not a big problem. So, if you're willing to listen in the collaborative process, you can do amazing things. And it's a lot easier to do things when you have people helping to lift you up than trying to do it on your own.
Yes, my art director is originally from Spain, and so English is not his first language, but every time he says to me, so Christopher, I know English is not my first language, but do you think that, and then he will lay out a problem, which is the solution, because it does it every single time. So I love that collaboration with my art director, Paco.
Well, and Tim, thank you. It's great for the students on this call, especially, when you're that new student or the intern and you think, well, my ideas can't be good, right? And yet you just said they're great, right? You always want to empower people to speak up, especially the new voices in the room. We are running out of time, but we've got a really good question in the Q&A. So Allie is going to pitch that question to all of you as we start to get towards the finish line here.
I think all of you honestly started to answer this question a little bit. So how much of your success is based on not what you know, but who you know? How are you guys using those connections that you've made throughout your career to further yourselves? You can start with Ryan if you need to.
Sure. I'd say the landscape of media has been so turbulent that half the network that you'd expect to have a long career is now in real estate or they moved away. So it's been very interesting to see how everyone has kind of found their own path, and sometimes that's veering off in a different way. So the advice I would give anyone is make legitimate relationships with people, because those friends that you have, the people that you want to talk to, are the ones that will help you out the most. And because a lot of times people will network and they'll try to kind of social climb or make a buddy up with the boss or someone. But I've seen more success with myself, but also with my successful friends who are nice to the assistant, who then gets a promotion years later and becomes the editor at a magazine, and they're a publicist, and that's who they need. So I think always understanding that people will grow, and today could be their day where they're on top of the mountain or high on the hog, and tomorrow that could completely change.
Yep. Avoid making enemies. And also, for me, mentors are absolutely have been key to my career growth. And at my agency, we have this mentoring thing where you can get connected with somebody in an entirely different agency across the world somewhere. And so I have random people that I sort of mentor for a little bit too, to kind of help them in the system. So mentoring.
Yeah, that's always, you never burn any bridges, because you never know when someone's going to end up somewhere and might be, coming back in your life. I think that's important. As for who you know, I'm very proud of the fact that in 15 years, Blue Dog has spent $0 on marketing. Almost all of my new clients and all of my existing clients have come through referral. And that goes back to the trust thing, because that's their name, their word saying, I recommend Tim for this, or I recommend Blue Dog. So that we've been very fortunate that we've had one client that's referred us out to another, that's referred us out to another. And, other than the RFP process with the feds, that's where all my businesses come from, one way or another. And we've ended up in some pretty crazy places, like, in the middle of nowhere, Georgia, at a hospital that I didn't know anybody at, but they knew somebody who knew somebody at Advent Health who was really happy with what we did. And here we are in the middle of nowhere in Georgia. So those connections and really absolutely delivering on what you promise will create those relationships, because people like to do business with people they like.
Yes.
And they like to do business with people who make them look good, don't cause problems, and deliver not, exactly what you asked or better.
Mm-hmm.
So you can enter into a project and make a bunch of promises on it, but it's no good if you can't deliver on it. Mm-hmm. And those are the sort of people who are having drinks with a competing firm or someone from somewhere else that says, who you should call? You should call Blue Dog for this.
Yep.
And as far as who that is the best thing you can do, because having a referral gives you such a leg up in business to know that somebody has already vouched for you. Mm-hmm. Half of the work is already done.
Yep. And I see the question quickly. Do you want to do the one in the chat of what we would get, advice we would give our first semester students?
Sure.
I would say don't be afraid to make mistakes. Go out on a limb a little bit more, and also eat all the cool cookies you can. Well, they won't put weight on you. Yep.
Ryan or Tim, advice to your first year Wartburg self?
I would give advice that I learned from Penny. She advised me first semester when my advisor was out, and I had signed up for everything. I was like so excited. I signed up for absolutely everything. And she sat me down and she's like, too much. You got to quit 3 things on the spot. Okay. Like, let's be grounded in reality so you can focus on the things that you really love and have space to grow instead of rushing around.
That time that you have in college is such an amazing and magical time, that pursue your passions. If you want to try something, you want to do something, there's nothing stopping you. The worst that can happen is someone says no. You know, you want to go, you want to join the choir, you want to go to Europe and tour with the choir, you want to go to Wartburg West, my last May term, I did a documentary in the Philippines with Liz Mathis. Sounded like a great idea at the time. It was a great idea. Did I ever think that I'd be in the Philippines shooting a documentary at 22 years old, and getting college credit for it? No, but it sparked with me. I was like, yeah, let's do this. It sounds like fun. You know, I think you need to just leave yourself open that the person you are when you first walk in Wartburg will not be the person that you leave. And even 10 years down the line, you may be a different person. You may be pursuing jobs in your major, you may not. But you can't be for lack of trying. It can't be, don't hold yourself back. If something seems exciting or fun or interesting or new, go for it. And no breaks. Go for it. You know, nobody's ever gotten anywhere with the brakes on. So if you see something cool, just go for it. Try it out. If it doesn't work out, no harm, no foul. But if it does work out, you're going to have an amazing experience you're going to carry with you the rest of your life.
Tim, Christopher, Ryan, thank you. Thank you for being here tonight. Thank you for all the incredible work you're doing. Allie, thanks for being a great co-host. And, you know, we moved around, so thank you for your flexibility. And we will invite Penny to come back on and take us home.
Thank you all for your excellent conversation this evening. And I would like to express our gratitude to Ryan Hahn, Tim Stockman, and Christopher Wormanen for joining us as panelists, and to Allie Parkhurst for her student perspective. On behalf of President Ertzman and the Nights to Know Planning Committee, thank you for joining us, and good night.